Hello, Nausheen. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing decently. So what was your goal with your documentary, An Act of Worship?
Oh, that's a very big question. Start us off. Okay.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think ultimately, like the goal for me was to make a film for my community, to capture what I felt our experiences had been for the last 30 years, as somebody from the community. And the goal for audiences, Muslim audiences particularly, to take away from the film is to, recontextualize what the last 30 years have meant for us. And also, there's a lot of like unacknowledged trauma in our community. So we would be filming with people sometimes, and they would, be like, this incident of Islamophobia happened to me, but it wasn't that bad. And it wasn't like what happened to somebody else. And so, but then you have like 10 of those incidences that you're like carrying around. So we really wanted to acknowledge that there is trauma in the community, but how can we start healing from it? And that's really what we hope is like the next phase of what this film will do and what we're aiming for with like our impact campaign, for instance.
Okay, tell me about the Impact campaign.
Yeah, so we have our like impact campaign is about healing and storytelling. So I did like a pilot version of this with an organization called the I'm like forgetting the name, the Coalition for Civil Freedoms.
Okay.
And it was a storytelling workshop where I was talking to families who had people that are family members that are incarcerated because of the war on terror. And so, we decided the workshop was going to be about, a lot of these people, some of them for 20 years, like since 9/11, have been introducing themselves as like the daughter of X or the sister of X, somebody who went to prison because of the war on terror. So it was really about how do we like decenter your trauma and also like think about your story outside of this family member, like who are you? And like some of the people that we were speaking to in that organization were these incredible activists and had become attorneys, or like some of them were also like, I'm a mom and I love to sing, and so somebody started singing during the workshop. So really like have like, as the film is recontextualizing what the last 30 years have been, our impact campaign is about kind of doing like a personal recontextualizing and like saying like, let's decenter our trauma and now who are we?
Okay, cool. So back to the documentary, I liked how it was like the history of the United States for the past 30 years, but just from like a personal lens, or certainly from a community lens, but you're only talking to so many people in the community, right? It does have like sort of like a personal and more historical approach, I guess, or like subjective and objective, I guess, like individual and community all at once, kind of, and that's like sort of that's the ride for like an hour and a half. Was that always the plan?
I think it was the plan really early on. Like we started the film at the end of 2016, like right after the election. And the ban obviously happened right at the beginning of 2017. And so that was driving a lot of the verite. We were filming with activists early on who were addressing issues around the Muslim ban. And we thought that the film is gonna maybe be about the ban or be about Trump's presidency, but always, we always understood as a team, and we're a primarily Muslim filmmaking team, so even from our own experiences, we understood like Trump didn't come out of nowhere, the Muslim ban didn't come out of nowhere, and even 9/11 there's like a precursor to anti-Muslim rhetoric and policy in this country that predates 9/11. So we kind of knew like we needed to look at this historical perspective, but the how of it was something that we definitely figured out much later.
Cool. Okay, interesting. So you said you were reaching out to activists, your subjects. How do you approach someone to be in a documentary?
I mean, I guess like in this case, I was approaching people who I felt like were very like familiar to me. You know, like I for instance, like we started the film approaching Care LA,
Yeah.
and my sister had been a civil rights attorney for that chapter. So
Right.
I knew them and, you know, they knew me. And so that was kind of like an initial, like kind of like an easy meeting. And they were very kind to introduce us to activists in different parts of the country. So we were already like sort of vouched for by somebody like Hussam Lush is like very well respected within the Muslim community kind of nationally, especially in activist spaces. So having his like stamp of approval certainly helped. But then we had to be on the ground and like meet people in person. Like there was obviously a lot of hesitancy from our community, which has been misrepresented most of the time in the media. So even as Muslim filmmakers, people were like kind of giving us the side eye, and we're like, you know, we need to know who you are. And so we showed up and we had coffee with them, and you know, we did a preliminary interview, and then we're constantly also just checking in and saying like, does this still feel good? Like, do you still want to be in this movie? Like, here's some footage. Like, this is where your story is going. Like, are you comfortable if this is where your story goes? Like, so it was just a constant communication between us and the people that we were filming. But yeah, like the initial start of it was, I also think like, you know, every one of the activists that we met, that we filmed with, like I said, they were very familiar to me in the way where we had so much shared experience where like, you know, we could sit down and like, and just have a lot of stuff to relate to. So I think it felt like meeting a friend. And then it was like, hey, do you want to become better friends and just hang out for 4 years?
Cool. Okay. So what were some interesting scenes that didn't make the final cuts?
I feel like there's so much in this film that did end up in the movie. You know, like one particular person who I wish we had been able to incorporate was this woman, Nasreen El Amin. She was denied entry at JFK the night the Muslim ban went into effect. She was, I think at that time, she was already a green card holder or maybe a citizen. And, you know, she was denied entry coming home from Sudan. And we, you know, had a really compelling interview with her that we couldn't figure out how to use in the film. There's also another, you know, local activist in New York, Asad Dandia, who had been under surveillance by the NYPD, and they sent an informant into his community, but that informant had spent, I think, almost a year kind of infiltrating like his friend network, his mosque. He came to have dinner at his family's home. And, you know, ultimately, actually, the ACLU helped Asad you know, file a lawsuit against the NYPD that he won. And so like some of those stories, like his story, for instance, is like its own feature film, but that, you know, we weren't able to include it.
Did you ever reach out to like Ilhan Omar or Rashid Tlaib?
We actually filmed a little bit with Rasheda, but that didn't end up making the cut. But we were really interested in like grassroots organizers. So that was kind of our lens always.
I guess that's like when you introduce someone in Congress, then it's like a separate thing.
Totally. And I mean, like, to be very honest, and this is not talking about Rasheda or Ilhan at all, because we didn't really, you know, approach them about this. But there is, of course, just a different machinery in terms of like publicity and PR around that person. And like, we have a lot of very intimate moments with people, and that's also one of the things that was our goal. And we didn't you know, want to film with somebody that was not going to be comfortable giving us that kind of access.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so do you have any tips for documentarians you want to share besides discouraging and gatekeeping?
Like,
I'm joking.
have I been discouraging? Yeah.
No. Do
Okay.
you have advice for like people who want to like get into it? I'm just joking with the discouraging gatekeeping thing.
Okay. I don't, I mean, so I don't like, I'm actually a cinematographer. That's what I do.
Yeah.
90% of the time. And that's, a career that I still have and hope to have for many years. So I guess like my journey as a director is a little bit different, maybe from some other people who are approaching directing as a goal and want to just be directors. So I also think that every documentary that I've done, I kind of like fell into. So like my first documentary, The Ground Beneath Their Feet, follows like two women that were paralyzed in an earthquake in the north of Pakistan in 2005. And an earthquake had happened there. Had just graduated from college and I was like, I can make a film. And I spent like 9 years trying to finish that film. So I guess like, maybe my advice would be like, know what you're getting into. Like, even with this film, we were like, let's film for like max 2 years. And now it's been 6 years of getting it completed. So like just know that it's going to take a long time is maybe my advice.
Okay. So would you make a narrative film?
It's not something that I am currently like thinking about. Like I love to shoot documentary. I love to shoot fiction, and it's something that I'm, very passionate about as a DP. And maybe if there was, like everybody always says, like if there's the right story, I just maybe haven't found it yet.
What genre would you go for if you were going to say right now, without thinking about it too much?
I don't know if you can see the little baby Yoda. But if somebody was like, do you want to direct a Star Wars film? Or do you want to like, direct, like I was just talking about X-Men on another call. Like I definitely do love, the superhero genre, the sci-fi, fantasy. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now we know. So do you feel like Islamophobia has died down at all since Trump has left office?
I think that like, one of the things that we looked at in the film is like, why do we kind of see these spikes in anti-Muslim rhetoric and Islamophobia? And what we found was that a lot of times this is like happening around election cycles. So I'd be really curious to see, how things play out this November, because it's definitely like a popular mechanism for a lot of politicians to build up support. And so there's like an ebb and flow. So right now, maybe we're not at the peak of it, but I certainly don't think that on a daily basis, I don't think that that's changed for a lot of people. So if we think about something like the Muslim ban, for instance, President Biden repealed the ban last year. So many families are still being impacted by it. Like they're just this last April, IRAP sent a letter to the White House about how 50% of families that are in the, have already gotten the background check and the health check and everything, they're still being denied, 50% of refugee families, they're still being denied, their family members are still being denied entry. 75% that have already completed everything, they're just waiting for their family members to come. So like there are ways that Islamophobia is still showing up in people's lives on a, daily, that might not have to do with somebody like Trump kind of shouting over the airwaves or on Twitter.
Right. So you just said like very casually, like, your community is going to be used as a crutch basically by someone at some point, and that really sucks.
It does really suck.
You just kind of accept it. Like this is part of a life, right?
I mean, it's been part of my life. Like this film is seen from the lens of people like me whose parents immigrated here after the Immigration and Naturalization Act was passed. So they came here in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we've grown up in the United States. So it's like definitely from like a first generation, kind of immigrant Muslim lens. And I think that has been our experience. And like, again, if the scholarship that we looked at is that after the fall of like the Berlin Wall, the United States and its military industrial complex needed a new enemy. And, the Muslim world is that enemy to like keep our economy going. And so I guess it is something that I don't like foresee any change in the near future. And, you know, as we show in the film, like it doesn't matter if there's a Republican in office or if there's a Democrat in office, like these policies continue to impact our community.
I'm sorry, that sucks.
It does suck, yeah. But, you know, I think how we respond to it is what the film is about.
Okay. Wow. I don't want to even like have any like stoic advice or I have nothing to offer. I have nothing to say other than that's unfortunate and I'm sorry to hear that. Are you happy to be included in the Tribeca Film Festival at least?
Yeah, no, of course we're like thrilled, and I'm
Yeah.
so happy that it's like a hometown premiere. You know, we have a lot of friends and family that are coming out. All of our participants are going to be here, and yeah, we're like ecstatic.
Awesome. Well, Nasha, thanks a lot for talking to me today. What do you have planned next?
I'm actually working on a short film that I received funding for from ITBS, and that looks at young Muslims and their relationship with their body and sexuality, and we are hoping to, you know, get it completed by early 2023. It's called
Okay.
Halal Bodies, so you can be on the lookout for that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.